Hello everyone and welcome to Boundless Dentistry. In this video we'll talk about one of the most life-threatening conditions that is experienced by the dental surgeon and oral and maxillofacial surgeons and other dental specialties, that is Ludwig's angina. Ludwig's angina is a life-threatening condition that must be treated as soon as possible because it mainly leads to airway compromise. So it's really important to treat it immediately. So in this video we'll talk about everything in detail about Ludwig's angina. So let's get started. Now, starting off this video is by basically talking about what actually is Ludwig's angina. Now, Ludwig's angina, as you can see in this clinical picture, is an acute condition that is life-threatening. It is really serious and it has to be treated as soon as possible, and it mostly arises from cellulitis. It is a form of severe cellulitis that spreads bilaterally. Now, what do we mean by bilaterally? It involves both sides of your neck, left and right side. It involves three spaces simultaneously: the submental space, which is present anteriorly, then sublingual space and submandibular space. It involves these three spaces bilaterally, occurring bilaterally. Involves three spaces as we've discussed before. Some of the symptoms that the patient experiences while having Ludwig's angina is fever, tenderness over here. Patient experiences tenderness over here. It's a board like swelling. It's really strong and stiff swelling that is present over here, and it leads to strabismus, that is difficulty in opening mouth more than normal. The patient cannot open mouth. There is very limited mouth opening, so trismus. Now, if this condition, Ludwig angina, is not treated properly, it is life-threatening and leads to airway compromise. So patient has difficulty in breathing, and in some cases the oxygen level also fluctuates, which leads to cyanosis. Now, without antibiotics, not treating this condition as soon as possible, the mortality rate is really high, mainly due to airway being compromised. So this is a brief note about what actually is Ludwig's angina. Now moving on towards the pathophysiology of Ludwig's angina, it mostly involves submental space, submandibular and sublingual spaces bilaterally. Sometimes it can also involve other spaces, such as when the infection is being moved in a more aggressive pattern, that is parapharyngeal spaces, retropharyngeal space, and sometimes even mediastinum is also involved in severe cases. So firstly it starts off with submental, submandibular and sublingual spaces. Now when culture is taken from these, for example pus is present in this case, the organisms that are mostly isolated are Staphylococcus aureus, S. viridans also inoculated, Peptostreptococcus, fusiform bacilli. It's sort of mixed infection. There are aerobic and anaerobic bacteria, both are present in this particular pathology. Now, one particular point about this pathology is that it spreads really rapidly, involves submental, sublingual, submandibular spaces, and so on very rapidly. So that mandates it being treated as soon as possible. Now, if it's not controlled, for example, medical management, airway management, surgical management, it leads to airway being compromised. So it is really important to treat this condition as soon as possible. Now let's talk about the etiology or the causative factors that lead to Ludwig's angina. Now the most commonly is dental caries and poor oral hygiene. Now dental caries then leads to endodontic infections, then periradicular infection, then abscess, and finally if even that abscess is not treated, it leads to cellulitis and Ludwig's angina. Next, sometimes trauma such as mandibular fractures, frenuloplasty, tongue piercing, these all leads to development of infection. So in some cases it can also lead to Ludwig's angina. Infection from oral malignancy can also cause it. Submandibular sialadenitis, that is inflammation of the submandibular salivary gland. So in those cases it can also lead to infection and development of this angina. Sometimes patients are systemically compromised. So in those cases, for example in diabetes, the white blood cell count is decreased, so there is increased chance of developing infection. So in those cases patient can develop Ludwig's angina. Patients on chemotherapy also have decreased immunity, and similarly for aplastic anemia as well. So Those who are systemically compromised, they have an increased chance of developing Ludwig's angina. Peritonsillar abscess, upper respiratory infections, and trauma to floor of mouth. So these are the etiological factors that lead to development of Ludwig's angina. Now let's talk about what are the clinical features that we encounter when we see a patient that is suspectedly suffering from Ludwig's angina. Firstly, and the most prominent feature that we can appreciate in such a patient is bilateral woody swelling, which involves submental, sublingual, and submandibular spaces bilaterally. As you can see in this clinical picture, this is an adult and this is a child patient. Now, you can see the board-like swelling that is present around the entire area of the neck, involving the submental, sublingual, and submandibular spaces bilaterally. Similarly for this child as well. So this is the most prominent feature that you can appreciate in that patient. Now you can also see a double chin, particularly in both of these cases. You can see this is a chin, and posteriorly there is a chin-like appearance also present. Next, you can also see in this clinical picture that the tongue is a bit protruded and it is elevated. Now, when such is the case, it leads to dysphagia, which means difficulty in swallowing. Odynophagia can also be present, that is pain while one is swallowing, and cyanosis, because there is a respiratory compromise being occurring, it leads to difficulty in breathing and maintaining oxygen levels. So in that cases, it leads to cyanosis. When tongue is being protruded out, elevated, the swelling is around the neck, it leads to blockage or deviation of trachea. It's difficult to breathe now. So when that is the case, it leads to airway obstruction. Patient has difficulty in breathing because the airway is being obstructed. Saliva is also being drooled out because of all of the above mentioned conditions. Now next. Patient experiences difficulty in breathing mostly in supine position. If there is septicemia present, patient will present with high fever, malaise, body pain, and leukocytosis, that is increase in white blood cells. Now, moreover, when the tongue is elevated, protruded, trachea is also being pressed upon, there is change in vocal tone of the patient, which is dysphonia. There is trismus, as we have discussed before. Patient has difficulty in opening their mouth, which is to their normal extent. The breath is also foul because of all of this condition. Now, when we see radiologically, if there is a thumb sign on epiglottis, that means that the patient has laryngeal edema. So this is a characteristic radiographical feature of presence of laryngeal edema. So this is all about the most commonly encountered clinical features of a patient suspectedly suffering from Ludwig's angina. Now, to confirm our diagnosis that the patient is actually suffering from Ludwig's angina, we go for certain investigations. Firstly, we start off with some lab tests. We go for hemoglobin, complete blood count, and blood glucose level. Now, we check blood glucose levels so that we can see whether the patient is diabetic or not. CBC to check the red blood cell count, white blood cell count, the normal oxygen count, and so on. Next, we go for panoramic X-ray. Now, panoramic X-ray (OPG) is mainly because to check whether there is any odontogenic source. For example, sometimes there is a dental caries present, odontogenic infection is present. So in these cases, it can also lead to Ludwig's angina. As you can see, this second mandibular molar is responsible for causing Ludwig's angina. So when we know that there is some odontogenic cause, so when we'll remove the cause, automatically the patient will start improving in its condition. We also go for cervical profile and posterior anterior radiograph. Now, we go for these radiographs to specifically check for the increasing volume of soft tissues and to see whether the trachea is deviating or not. Because if the trachea is deviating, that means that the airway obstruction is present and it has to be treated as soon as possible. Ultrasound, we also go for ultrasound, and it is a cheap and readily available source of investigation which is used to differentiate between cellulitis, abscess, and adenopathy in head and neck infections. CT scan is preferably more done in these recent times, and it gives a really accurate diagnosis. In this case, whether the patient has Ludwig's angina or not, and which spaces are involved. For example, in the CT scan, you can see submental and submandibular space are being involved and the volume is increasing. So we know that the patient is now suffering from Ludwig's angina. So these are the commonly performed investigations to reach a diagnosis of Ludwig's angina. Now, there are certain similar conditions that interpret like the patient might be suffering from these conditions instead of Ludwig's angina. That is the differential diagnosis. Now, firstly, there is angioneuritic edema. Next, cellulitis, lingual carcinoma, lymphadenitis, peritonsillar abscess, salivary gland abscess, and sublingual hematoma. Now, these are the conditions that mimic to Ludwig's angina, and to differentiate those conditions from Ludwig's angina, we go for the investigation that we discussed just now. So, this will differentiate whether the patient is suffering from Ludwig's angina or not. Now we have reached a diagnosis that the patient is suffering from Ludwig's angina. Now, how will we treat such a patient? Now, there are certain treatment objectives that we have to keep in mind before we actually start the treatment. Now, firstly, we have to maintain the airway of the patient, because that is the main cause of leading to higher mortality rates, because the airway is not being managed. Because if the airway is not managed, it will lead to other complications. So the first target is to maintain the airway. Next, there are bacteria present. It's a mixed infection, aerobic and anaerobic, both bacteria are present. So to treat that, we have to start early and aggressive antibiotic therapy. Thirdly, if there is increased swelling, there is increased pus present, so we have to perform incision and drainage in order to relieve that space so that the patient can breathe properly. Now, since the patient is suffering from, for example, high fever, malaise, body pain, the body is dehydrated and has lost a lot of nutrition. So to improve that, we have to start nutrition and hydration support. All of these four things have to be kept in mind and done properly to achieve optimal prognosis for the patient. Now let's start firstly with managing airway of the patient. Now we have 5 different approaches that we can use, but some of them are used more commonly and they are more beneficial to the patient as compared to other. So first we'll start with tracheostomy. On tracheostomy, although it's not preferably and more commonly performed, but it can be performed when other modalities, for example cricothyroidectomy and endotracheal intubation, cannot be performed. So then we go for tracheostomy using local anesthesia. Now we mostly don't go for tracheostomy because there is increased risk of infection spread. For example, this infection can spread to other spaces, for example retropharyngeal space, parapharyngeal space, even mediastinum as well. So it leads to other infections. For example, it can even lead to pleural effusion and pleural infection as well. So we mainly reserve tracheostomy when other treatment modalities, the preferable ones, aren't useful for the patient. Next, we can also go for blind nasal intubation, BNI. It's mostly questionable, it's not readily performed because it leads to increased trauma to the patient. Third, cricothyroidectomy is performed commonly because there is decreased risk of infection to the patient. Now, to perform cricothyroidectomy, there is this cricothyroid membrane you can see over here. There is thyroid cartilage and cricoid cartilage over here. Between these two cartilages, we have cricothyroid membrane. Now, incision is placed where you can see right over here, these red dots over here, and then we insert a tube over here so that patient can now breathe properly and their airway can be maintained when the pathology is being treated. Cricothyroidectomy is most preferably performed because there is decreased risk of infection to the patient. Fiber optic intubation can also be performed, but it's more sophisticated, although it's less invasive, but it's most commonly reserved for deep neck infections. Lastly, and the second most commonly performed treatment, is endotracheal intubation. As you can see in this diagram as well, this endotracheal tube via mouth is inserted here and the airway is being maintained. So it's really speedily performed, and it's also non-surgical as compared to tracheostomy, which is a surgical procedure. You have to place a cut. You can see over here, you place an incision over here, then you place this tracheostomy tube over here. There's increased risk of trauma. So as compared to tracheostomy, endotracheal intubation is preferred. So firstly, we go for cricothyroidectomy, and if we can also go for endotracheal intubation, but tracheostomy is reserved when cricothyroidectomy and endotracheal intubation cannot be performed. Now let's talk about the medical management that is mostly for treating the bacteria that is present in this pathology and administrating fluids as well. So firstly, we have an IV access. We do that to give fluids to the patient and antibiotics administration as well. Now, empirically antibiotic therapy is started. Now what do we mean by that? Since this condition is life threatening, we do not have the luxury of knowing which bacteria are involved, because there are in many cases different kind of bacteria are involved. So we go for wide spectrum antibiotics and we start it randomly, and then we go for culture and sensitivity, and since those results come, we wait for those results, but in the meantime we also start antibiotics so that there is no risk to life of the patient. So when the results of culture comes, then we change the antibiotics according to the sensitivity of the bacteria that is present. So this is a really important thing, that the antibiotics are to be started empirically. Now other antibiotics that we start are penicillins with beta lactamase inhibitors. Second, third, and fourth generation cephalosporins can also be used. Metronidazole is used because it offers a good anaerobic coverage. Some of the antibiotics commonly used are ampicillin with sulbactam and clindamycin, which is mostly for anaerobic infections. Piperacillin and tazobactam is also used. Gentamicin is a choice reserved for patients who are diabetic. We have to consider introducing the gentamicin to patients who are diabetic. Now, once we have managed the airway, we have done the medical management as well. Now, in some cases, these two modalities are not enough. We have to go for the third treatment option, that is performing surgical treatment. Now, in surgical treatment, we mainly go for incision and drainage. As you can see in this clinical picture, we place bilateral submandibular as well as midline submental or sublingual incision as well. Now this is a 3 to 4 centimeter incision below the angle of mandible, as you can see over here, and it's roughly parallel to the inferior border of the mandible, as you can see over here. Now we place a drain over here, and so that the pus and everything that is inside, it drains out, and then eventually after some period of time we remove the drain when the drainage is minimal. So this is the IND, incision and drainage procedure, which we perform when airway management and medical treatment are not enough for offering optimal treatment to the patient. So these are the three treatment options that we go for. Firstly, starting off with airway management, because that is the most important part. Then we go for medical management, and then we go for surgical treatment. Now, in some cases, treatment, for example, is delayed, or the patient doesn't go to the doctor because of any reason. There are certain chances of developing complications, because Ludwig angina, as we have discussed before, is a life-threatening condition. So some of the complications that the patient might develop is airway obstruction. We have discussed this before, it's really important. Carotid arterial rupture, thrombophlebitis of inferior jugular vein, mediastinitis, that is inflammation of the mediastinum, empyema, necrotizing fasciitis, pericardial effusion, osteomyelitis, and pleural effusion. These are some of the complications that might develop if Ludwig's angina is not treated on time. There are other complications as well. These are the commonly encountered complications. So it is really important to treat Ludwig's angina as soon as possible, because it's a life-threatening condition. That's why it has a really high mortality rate in the pre-antibiotic era, where there were no antibiotics. So now, since there are antibiotics present and advanced treatment options are also present, it has to be treated on time to avoid all of these complications and have a better prognosis for the patient. So in this video we talked about everything that is related to Ludwig's angina, starting off with what actually is Ludwig's angina. Then we talked about the anatomy of the spaces that the Ludwig's angina spreads, so that is submental, submandibular, sublingual spaces bilaterally. Then we talked about the etiological factors that are involved in causing Ludwig's angina. Then we talked about the clinical features that the patient present with, which is suspected to suffer from Ludwig's angina. Then, to confirm the diagnosis, we talked about different investigations that are available for such patients. Then we talked about the treatment objectives, and finally we talked about the different treatment options, airway management, medical management, surgical management, that are available for the patient suffering from Ludwig's angina. And lastly, we talked about the complications if Ludwig's angina is not treated on time. So I hope this video was useful for you, and if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time.